Hello everybody, take a look at what I have for you today. This knife comes to you from Browning, and this is part of their Wihongi series of knives, which is kind of a hard word to pronounce, but what initially drew me to this knife was actually the handle scales here, because this series of knives do have these handle scales that are made out of a hemp micarta, and so that was kind of a unique feature of this knife. But also a kind of a characteristic of this series, you might be able to see it right here, is on the blade you're going to see somewhat of an interesting pattern etched in. And so this was named for Browning Wihongi, I believe, and he's some sort of a martial artist who I believe must be of New Zealand or the Maori culture. So I'm sorry if I can't pronounce that correctly. But that whole tribalistic feel is what they were going for with this knife series. So as a result, we have the hemp micarta handles, as well as this distinctive blade style, this design on it, which has that kind of Polynesian tribal feel to it. So it's kind of a unique take on a knife, and especially for a company like Browning, which is of course known for firearms here in the United States. We do know that traditionally, and if you don't know, if you aren't aware, most firearm companies that come out with knives, those knives are generally just contracted out to cheap Chinese knife makers, and a lot of the times the knives in quality are very low. They just kind of ride on the name brand to help sell the product, and I think that's the case with this one to a limited degree. Browning is one of the better companies over the years that has made some licensed knives. I think they're kind of on a mid to low level knife quality. They used to make some really good stuff. I know in the past, I can show off this one really quickly. This one is called the Browning Ice Storm. And this one was actually made by Micarta in Japan. So it has a nice VG10 steel blade, Japanese-made knife. So if you're familiar with Micarta at all, you might notice the style of this knife looks very familiar because this is a Japanese-made knife, but it still has the Browning name on it. So the Browning Ice Storm. And they even resurrected that name. So if you were to do a Google search now for a Browning Ice Storm, a totally different Chinese-made knife would appear in your results. But they also recently came out with the Black Label knives, which I believe this one is a part of. This one is called the Sliver, I believe, but it's hard to read, but there you go. Black Label tactical blades, of course, with that Browning logo. So this one is the Sliver. And again, a nice quality knife. This one's Taiwan made. It's meant to look a little higher end. But the fact is that Browning, it looks the company name, whoever runs it, is trying to get away from the lower end Chinese junk knives. At least that idea that they're not going to be great. But that being said, this knife is most certainly made in China. It is an assisted opening knife, and I picked this one up from Big 5 Sporting Goods for about $20. So the box, you can see this is actually an exclusive to Big 5 because, I mean, that's part of the box right here, just the Sporting Goods label. And so I first saw a knife very similar to this when I received the A.G. Russell catalog. And I thought this was honestly the same exact knife they were offering at that time because, of course, I remembered the hemp micarta scales. That was something that was unique. I remembered the patterning on the blade. So I'll put an overlay and you can do a comparison in that the knives are similar, but they are a slightly different pattern from one another. But looking closer at just this knife, in hand, it is a full-size folder. The blade length is about 3.5 inches, and that is from tip to the end of the cutting edge, 3.5 inches there. Overall length of the knife is about 8 5/8 about. And the weight of this knife, I believe it came in at a little under 5 ounces. 4.75 ounces for this knife. It does come out with the typical tip down carry only, one side only, which again you see a lot on Chinese made folders. They did try to make it a little unique though. You can see the little Browning logo on the pocket clip, which is kind of cool if you enjoy that logo. I know a lot of people use the logo as a status symbol. I see it a lot on the back of pickup trucks sometimes. So the fact that this would be sticking out of your pocket, if that is a good thing for you, then by all means, enjoy that. But again, like I said at the beginning, what drew me to this knife was the scales. Because again, outside of custom makers, you do not see hemp micarta done on many knives nowadays. So look at the pattern. It looks really cool. I do like the dark brownish color that it is. And in the rear, we do have this backspacer, which is like a coyote tan, like a G10, which is, again, kind of a cool little neat feature. And this is one of the differences between this knife here and the Wihongi folder that was offered through A.G. Russell and other websites. I believe Knife Center still has them in stock, so you can see the direct comparison. But in the handle, you'll also notice this outcropping right here, which kind of is in an awkward location. You figure it would be better to have it between your index and middle finger right there, but it's between your two middle fingers. So I mean, it doesn't get in the way, but it seems a bit awkward to put it there, and that's really just a design feature. But besides that, this is a liner lock, assisted opener. And one disappointing thing I noticed is when I was at Big 5 Sporting Goods, as I was just looking through their counter, pretty much every knife they offer there was some sort of an assisted opening knife. Which I guess that's just the market nowadays. In these low-end knives, you're going to see a lot of assisted opening. This one I did kind of like. It didn't have a flipper because everything was a flipper, everything was assisted opener, and that was super, super common. So this one is just a thumb stud opening, and the assisted action works really well. It's like any other knife. There's no play, and it did come really sharp, of course. Pretty common for these types of knives. You might notice some play in the thumb studs. They might rotate or rattle. And I don't see that in this one here, which is nice. So when the knife is open, we get a nice early lockup. We have some jimping up on top of the blade, which is nice because, of course, even though the handles are the micarta, it's very smooth. It's not grippy at all. The pocket clip doesn't get in the way of you holding the knife. Nice deep carry, tip down only. And one thing I was trying to get the camera to focus on, there we go. Take a look at the blade. You can see some of those right here in the scales. Some of these lines, it looks like the metal's almost delaminated or something. So I'm not sure if it just wasn't ground properly in the finishing process of making this knife. I don't think it's a safety issue, because most certainly the pattern on the blade is just an etching, maybe like a laser etching or something. When you run your finger across your fingernail, you can feel, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it catches on it. So that's certainly just an artificial design feature. Of course, made in China. And I couldn't find an exact model name for this knife other than that it's a Wihongi style knife from Browning. It's not part of their Black Label series, which I assume means it's going to be lower quality. But that being said, the Black Label version of this knife, which was available elsewhere, is a 7CR 17 MOV steel. But this one is 8CR 13 MOV. Again, like many common Chinese knives, that's a good thing in my opinion. I think 8CR 13 is a pretty darn good steel for what it is, and especially when you get into this value knife section, it's pretty much what you should expect, and it's the minimum you should intend to get with these knives. Anything lower than that, and you probably want to make a pass on that knife. But again, this is assisted opening. I'm going to try and take it apart and see if I can take out the torsion bar to get this to be a manual opener. I noticed inside the blade there is a detent hole, so hopefully this will make a regular manual folder. I think it would be much nicer as that. It seems like they put assisted opening in a lot of these knives just as a part of quality control, because it might be easier to make something assisted opening work properly as opposed to getting a properly adjusted manual folding knife. Before I open it up though, you will note right here you're going to see one white nylon washer on this side, and then on this side I'm curious to see what that is. It looks like it's a metallic washer of some sort, definitely not bronze. Looks like a silver color, so I wonder if it's just a steel washer there. It might have something to do with the assist mechanism, but I'm going to try and open this up and see what's inside. Again, if I start to strip out any of the screws, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm just going to put it back together as best I can, because right now it's a totally functional, perfectly workable knife. Only little flaws that I've seen, of course, are the delamination of the blade right here, which hopefully that's not a fatal flaw. But also on the pocket clip, if you take a closer look here around the corner, and you're going to see right here, looks like the holes for the pocket clip screw were not quite fully formed. So a regular knife company would probably consider this a blem, but this just got through quality control and it's mine. Doesn't appear to make any difference. I mean, the pocket clip feels very solid. I don't think it's going to come off or anything. And it's not so poorly formed that the screw would actually slip out. But that could be an issue when disassembling it, so we'll see how that goes. My number one fear is just stripping out the screws, because a lot of the times the screw heads are very low quality, and when you put a Torx bit in there, it's just going to strip it out entirely. But again, really cool knife in my opinion here. I love the look of it. I'm going to see if I can make it better by de-assisting it. That is my goal for today. And I'll update in a second or two and see how it goes with that. Alright, so that actually went surprisingly well. And so what I did is I took the knife apart. The only part of the knife that had Loctite was the pivot, so I had to heat it up and apply pressure to both sides to unscrew it. Nothing really stripped out though, and it came apart pretty easily besides that, and I took out the torsion bar, and so that's that right there. And now that it is not assisted anymore, the knife, super smooth, blade holds in just fine, nice and easy just to flick out, and you feel like you have a lot more control over the blade at this point. So there's the detent. So it's not just going to go flopping out of the handle. While I had it disassembled, you might notice it's a little bit different right here. I went ahead and I ground down the handle so that protrusion is no longer there. Feels much better in the hand as a result. So wasn't too hard to get apart. I do like the construction of it. It has these flathead screws that hold on the scales, and once you pop those off, those just come right out. And then there were a couple of screws in the G10 spacer that hold the scales together. And so there are two screws here, and then of course the pivot screw, and it came right apart. So no problems there. This is probably one of the easiest to take apart knives I've ever had. Still has nice centering. Still has nice early lockup. So no change there. And to answer my question from earlier, if you look at the washers, there's the white nylon washer on one side, and the other side, it looked like metal, but it's actually a clear plastic washer. So that was the side that had the assisted opening, the torsion bar in there, and so I assume that's the reason why it's a little bit different. So both sides are synthetic washers, and overall this knife, pretty nice to mention. I don't think the weight would have gone down any, because all I did was take down a little bit of this and I took out the torsion bar. I did want to show you one more close-up, however, of that pocket clip, because you can see right here where I guess they just missed the mark. So in making those holes, there's a little bit of a gap there. Still fully functional. Screws didn't strip out, they popped right out, no issue, and so that's great to say. But again, thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions about the Browning Wihongi, feel free to leave me a message and I will do my best to answer that question for you. But other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.